Must have been a full moon Saturday night because, Robin, players were charged up on Sunday. 5 players were ejected in 2 different games, and honestly, it could have been a lot more. Pro Bowler Tiki Barber is here, and before we talk about the brawls, which we're going to get into, which team do you think is the best of the best right now?
It's easy. The Philadelphia Eagles. Not only is their defense not scoring touchdowns early, I don't think they've given up a touchdown in the first quarter, but Carson Wentz is amazing. He makes every single throw. It's a play action. You saw it this weekend. Play action passes against a very good Denver Broncos defense. He puts it exactly where it has to be, over top of the defender before the safety gets there. And he's playing at a level that I don't think anybody expected him to at the beginning of the season. So their offense is now clicking. Now they have Ajayi, the running game, 3-headed committee running game, which never works unless your offense is clicking on all cylinders. So it's easily the Philadelphia Eagles right now going, sitting at 8-1, and now going into a bye week to rest up. I mean, they are in the catbird seat right now.
You, as a running back, you must watch them and be like, where was my Ajayi? All those.
Oh, I had one at Brandon Jacobs, but he only scored my touchdown. That was it.
Okay, so we saw a lot of lopsided finishes on Sunday. Who's the worst of the worst? This might not be easy.
Well, since it's unfair to pick on the Cleveland Browns and the San Francisco 49ers, who are clearly rebuilding, I have to say the Giants and probably the Bucs as well, because of the expectations that we had coming into this season. I mean, we looked at everything that happened with the Giants this offseason, and I'm building upon last year's 11-5 record and the defense. It was amazing. Right, man, this team can go to the Super Bowl, right? They have every single weapon. Yeah, I know Eli's getting a little old, and their offensive line is a little bit compromised, but this is a Super Bowl quality team. Dude, they got blown out at home and booed at home. My brother did that game, and he was killing them, and rightfully so. And so the Giants are certainly one that are worst of the worst. They can't find ways to win, and it's starting to seep over into the locker room with the Janoris Jenkins suspension for this game. And the Buccaneers, very similarly, they had high expectations. Dirk Cutter's not doing the job that I think everybody expected, and 5 losses in a row is something that's hard to survive down there in Tampa Bay with the Glazer family.
Okay, you mentioned the Giants. We were going to wait a little bit, let you get settled in and comfortable.
But you already went in.
But you went in, so let's just go for it, because it was uncomfortable, very uncomfortable in the post-game press conference with Ben McAdoo when he was asked what did he possibly say to his team at halftime against the Rams to try to inspire them. And here is what McAdoo had to say.
What did you say to them at halftime?
I can't even watch that.
Where was Cam Newton to tell him that the Titanic must go on?
It was so bad. Tiki's like, he forgot where he was.
Any answer but crickets, man. Any answer but
Say something. Okay, but this is also what came out of that post-game press conference, besides just the awkwardness, was that Ben McAdoo said he's going to try now for the young guys on the roster to get some reps. They're 1-7. The season is over. And they said, does that include the quarterback position? And he said, every position. I mean, is it possible that they would bench Eli Manning, and should he?
I can't see that happening. But when you're in dire straits and you're looking for optimism, you're looking for something just to say, this is going to drive us forward. Yeah, this year's a wash, but next year we're going to have this. Everybody's vulnerable. I don't see it happening, and I know he's probably just paying lip service because of how people are feeling about Eli right now. I mean, some of those possessions, they fumble and then they score a touchdown, and it's a fumble, and then they get a block punt. I mean, it's just everything is going awry for this Giants team. So I think he's saying that because he doesn't want to exclude Eli. He doesn't want Eli to be on a pedestal while everybody else is, getting dumped on. I don't see it happening, but I mean, you kind of have to start considering this. At what point do you say Eli's not our right now and our future needs to happen immediately?
That's crazy.
It is.
That's crazy. Okay, I feel like going after Eli Manning is the kind of, not going after, but questioning Eli, I feel like is the wrong way and the wrong target in all of this. But, okay, Giants, not the only bad loss. Tampa Bay, you mentioned. Cincinnati, a bad loss. Denver, a very bad loss. Yep. Are there more coaches that should be on the hot seat?
Oh, there's going to be a few. I mean, historically, there's, 7 or 8 every year. This year, certainly McAdoo has to be getting some scrutiny because he's not handling head coaching well. He's a very good coordinator. We saw this. And probably that seeped into last year when they went 11-5, as we mentioned. He's certainly on the hot seat. I think Marvin Lewis is definitely. I mean, he doesn't, for the first time in I think his career, he doesn't have a year next year. I think Chuck Pagano is also, even though despite their win this week, but that was without Deshaun Watson on the Houston Texans. So I think Chuck Pagano is on the hot seat, and certainly Dirk Cutter, who we just talked about. I mean, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers do not let coaches lose like this. I think there's a couple that happened. Lovie Smith in his first year, and Raheem Morris in his first year. They went on 5-game losing streaks, but it was, we're rebuilding, we're trying to get something new started. The circumstances of those coaches coming in allowed it to happen. Dirk has got to watch out because the expectation was that we're built for winning right now. We have all of the pieces that we need. We just go get Deshaun Jackson, who's a field stretcher. Our defense should be amazing with Quan Alexander and Levante David and all, not Levante David, Gerald McCoy, et cetera, and David.
Yeah.
But they're underperforming everywhere. So where do you start looking? Coaching.
You talk about some of those bad losses, frustration boiling over, including with the Bucs.
Yeah.
Mike Evans came out and took out Marshawn Lattimore from behind.
That was egregious, man.
Meanwhile, in the Bengals game, you had A.J. Green apparently watched too much of the UFC fights on Saturday night. He put Jalen Ramsey in a chokehold and then was punching him in the helmet. Should both of those guys be suspended, either or? Which one was worse?
Well, first of all, they should not have ejected Jalen Ramsey. He wasn't responding. I mean, obviously, he's maybe instigated it by pushing A.J. Green down to the ground, but that was in the course of play, right? A.J. Green got up and just lost his marbles, man. Again, throwing punches and everything else and putting him in a chokehold. But I think the more egregious one was Mike Evans. Look, Jameis Winston was out of the game, suffering re-injuring his shoulder. He's instigating Lattimore by punching him needling him in the back of the head. He turns around, doesn't really even engage Jameis Winston, just kind of maybe starts jawing at him, and out of nowhere, Mike Evans comes and drills him in the back, and I mean it's a dangerous action, like an assault action. It has nothing to do with the game that's going on. So Mike Evans is definitely going to get suspended in my mind. A.J. Green probably as well, because you throw punches, you're going to get suspended. But I think the more egregious one was Mike Evans, because he came, from 20 yards away.
Also, I never understand this. I get it, you're in the heat of the battle, passion, whatever. Punching a guy who's wearing a helmet might be one of the dumbest things I've ever heard.
I agree. I did that once.
You punched somebody with a helmet and break your hand?
No, I did, because I kind of missed. But on a punt return, I forget who it was, a long snapper, I called for fair catch, and I didn't even catch the ball. And he hit me. And so I was like, what are you doing? But I'm like,
you're better off going open hand.
And I hit him, and I was like, what did I do that for? Because it hurt like hell. I was like,
back to the Giants and their embarrassing loss. One of the reasons for it was Jared Goff, who was our adrenaline performer, presented by Toyota. Goff was 14-22 for 311 yards and 4 touchdowns with no interceptions. Second-year pro has now thrown 3 times as many TDs as picks on the season and is completing 60% of his passes. With the Rams now 6-2, the question becomes, is Goff now good enough to be the QB of a Super Bowl team?
Well, I think he's working to that, and he hasn't been in a fully pressurized situation yet. But what Sean McVay has taught him, which is if you're going to make a mistake, make it way downfield. And what's happening is some of those way downfield, maybe mistakes, are turning into touchdowns. Yeah. I mean, that bomb he threw, traveled like 65 yards. It's unbelievable. I didn't know his arm was that strong. But he's developed into this smart player, as well as a skilled player, but he's a smart player, and you're seeing the advantages that it's providing for the Rams. And Todd Gurley now has a chance to go off. He had a couple touchdowns against this Giants team, so you have to be encouraged. I don't know if they're ready to win a Super Bowl yet, but I love where he's going, especially considering the expectations that formed from him from last year, where I thought, honestly, he was going to be out of the league in 2 or 3 years. Some of these throws, he's throwing it to the camera right there, and he's missing, right? Tight end wide open, throws it into the ground. All of that is gone. It's a testament to the coaching staff.
Lots of storylines, one of them being Leonard Fournette not playing because he violated team rules, reportedly including missing the team picture. I didn't know that was that important.
Tommy C don't
mess
mess
does
around,
that have
man.
Tom Coughlin's fingerprints all over it?
Oh, man, he does not mess around. Look, it's one of the great things about Coach Coughlin, well now Executive Coughlin, is that it's all about the little things, right? The little things matter. And if it's as menial as it seems, as being responsible enough to show up for the team picture, then you will show up for the team picture. Or I want to start the meeting at 7:25. It says 7:30 on the sheet, on the schedule sheet, but I want to start it at 7:25. It's simple, makes you think a little bit, but if you do those things and you do them collectively, then your team has a chance to be successful, and that's what he's bringing to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Obviously, it goes through Doug Marrone as well, and so yeah, this was the right decision because he will never let anarchy rule, and I think at the end of his Giants career, that's kind of what started to happen. Some of that may have been Odell's fault. Some of that may have been just wearing thin of his message for 14 years there. But you see the benefits that it's bringing to the Jacksonville Jaguars. This team has skill for days on paper, and now the little things are starting to happen on game day, and that's why they're winning. I mean, hell, we got to say Blake Bortles looked good. I mean, usually it was like, oh, they're winning in spite of Blake Bortles.
Yeah.
Now he looked really good yesterday.
5 minutes early to the meeting.
Yes.
Another silly thing. Who misses the team photo?
I have
It's
no
the
idea.
easiest
I mean, maybe
day.
you didn't. You don't got to do anything. All you got to do is put your uniform on.
It's like,
You don't even need your helmet.
What causes that? He didn't like the background they
I don't
picked? He
know.
wanted the gray or
no,
something?
it's like me always talking about the lighting. I get it.
Show me my ISO.
I want
They
to see
probably
my
had
ISO.
he has a low number. They had him sitting in the front. He's like, no, I want to stand. I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm,
right.
I'm not sitting. I'm standing.
That
I'm
should
not
be-
showing up.
That should be the hill to die on.
I
right?
want to put it on the gram.
Yeah, right. Meanwhile, let's talk about Kirk Cousins. Washington, what a game. They drive
big.
70 yards in 35 seconds to beat Seattle. No one expected this. Great team win. Washington now 4-4. But what was the significance of this win besides it just being great for morale?
There's two things. One, people in Washington Redskins fans, they always say Kirk Cousins can't win in the big moment. Well, this was a big moment.
Sure.
And why it was important that they won this game is because you have to start looking at the wild card. We're halfway through the season. Some teams are a game past the halfway point. And right now, if you look at the wild card, it's the Carolina Panthers and the Dallas Cowboys, and then the Seattle Seahawks are sitting atop. They're the top three teams. They're a game behind the Seahawks at 4-4. Now, we know that the Packers are there as well, but the Packers are losing water, or gaining water right now in their ship right now at 4-4. They might lose tonight. So if they want to catch that second wild card, they're going to have to catch Dallas, and they're going to have to catch the Seattle Seahawks. Now, if they catch Seattle, because they've played them and they just beat them and they end up tied, they will get into the wild card. So it's a subtle thing, but it's an important thing at this point in the season.
Meanwhile, another team that's on a run trying to get into the playoffs is the Saints as we visit the NFC South. They've won 6 in a row while
Crazy.
the Bucks have lost 5.
Crazy.
Which is more surprising to you?
Probably the Bucks losing 5 because I just thought they were going to be better. Now, when I did that game with my brother, the Bucks and the Giants, we noticed something. We talked about it. The Bucks seem to score in spurts, right? They have 2-play drive, 5-play drive, and they can score quick touchdowns with big plays. Once those big plays went away and their running game stagnated, they just lacked the ability to move the ball and go score. The Saints, on the other side, they have started to play defense, and if you take out the 2 outliers from the beginning of the season where they gave up a ton of yards, I forget who they played at the beginning of the season. The Patriots in Minnesota.
Yep.
Sam Bradford had the day of the ages, and then they played the Pats, and they gave up 500 yards or whatever it was. If you take those 2 outliers this Saints defense is top 10 in the National Football League. We're talking about the Saints defense is top 10. And their offense now is clicking on a different cylinder. It used to be Drew Brees has got to throw the ball, 45, 50 times and throw for 360 yards, and that's how they're winning. Coming into this past weekend, I don't know I can't add on the stats in my mind quickly enough, but coming into this past weekend, their running backs, not the wide receivers, accounted for 62 of their pass receptions, which is a ton. And so it's a lot more dinking and dunking. It's a lot more smart football, not turnover prone. And you throw in this kid, Alvin Kamara, who just caught a little dink and dunker last weekend and turned it into a 38-yard touchdown by weaving in and out and breaking a tackle, keeping his balance and getting into the end zone. They have great talent everywhere now, and I think it's something that is unique to this, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and it's a testament to what Sean Payton has been able to persevere through over the last couple of years.
On the other side of that, with the Bucs, before the game, Jameis Winston was talking about eating W's. Instead, he's catching L's right now. What's going on with him? This was supposed to be a breakout year. I know he's dealing with injuries. Should they even consider shutting him down?
No, maybe. Honestly, going forward, because it's one thing if it's your non-throwing shoulder. It's just throwing shoulder that he keeps falling on. Their old line hasn't done a great job of protecting him. Even if they're not giving up sacks, he's getting hit a lot. And every time you fall on an injured shoulder, you re-injure it. It's kind of depressing when you think about it because of where we thought Jameis was going in the latter steps that he was climbing as a passer and as a leader. But it's starting to get away from him right now, and they might want to protect him from himself. You can tell, obviously, from the incident where he's poking Lattimore in the back of the head. His frustration is boiling over to the point that it's affecting the team.
Really interesting. We haven't talked about the Cowboys yet. They beat the Chiefs, looked very impressive. Somehow is Dallas weirdly an under-the-radar contender?
Yeah, but that was, you know how absolutely necessary that win was? Because Zeke is going to be gone. I know he keeps delaying it somehow. Every week it's like, oh, there's an injunction. He's going to get to play this weekend. At some point, that's not going to happen. And they are going to change significantly. He and Dak Prescott, when they're focused and they're just thinking about football, forget all the other stuff. Forget the love and the adulation and the celebrity that comes with being successful. But when they're just focused on football, Dak and Zeke are one of the best combinations in the National Football League. That's going to change because this suspension is going to happen, and their offense is going to change. So winning this game, especially because it was at home against one of the really good teams out of the AFC, the Kansas City Chiefs, was absolutely necessary for them. Are they able to manage and mitigate in the interim? I hope so, but this is where their schedule gets tough. So they had to win this game.
Tiki Barber, fresh off the New York City Marathon, came in here dancing, not even feeling any effects from the 26.2.
I feel a little bit like
tougher
crap.
3 hours, the marathon or a football?
No, 4.5 hours. So
I was giving you,
definitely
some
the marathon.
props.
But one great thing from the marathon, Shalane Flanagan, first American woman to win in 40 years, won the marathon. It was awesome too. We were on the course when we heard that it happened. It's just kind of uplifting.
Yeah, really was.
Amazing in New York. Thank you, New York. You guys were awesome.
I don't know how you do it, but it's fantastic.
I'm crazy.
I'd rather watch you do it than even think about doing it myself. Tiki Barber, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Fresh off the first college football rankings of the season, some less than desirable results for a few teams trying to be in that mix. We're joined now by our college football analyst, Pete Mundo. Some high-profile losses, particularly from some fairly well-known teams in the Big Ten. What was the biggest loss of the weekend?
The biggest loss, Robin, was Penn State against Michigan State. And here's why. If they had won that game with Ohio State losing, then all of a sudden Penn State's in the driver's seat potentially to getting to that Big Ten championship game and being a one-loss Big Ten champion. They still would have had a great chance at making the college football playoff if they only had that one loss to Ohio State the previous week. So they totally blew themselves up, whereas Ohio State, it was an awful loss. It really was. But they already had the one loss to Oklahoma, so they were behind the 8 ball a little bit. Had Penn State gone out there, gotten that win on Saturday, and then rolled through the rest of their schedule, maybe beaten Wisconsin in a Big Ten title game, they would have been in great shape.
So they're both done.
Both those teams are done. The Big Ten's only hope is Wisconsin at this point. Even then, Wisconsin hasn't played a ranked team all year. They won't these next 3 weeks. And then if you have one, let's say a top 10 win over a Michigan State or an Ohio State or somebody like that, is that even playoff worthy with the other teams we're talking about? I don't think it is.
So you do not see a path for Penn State or Ohio State to work their way back into the college football?
No, 2 losses. I mean, Ohio State has the Oklahoma loss. Now they have a nearly 30-point blowout loss against Iowa. Penn State's got these 2 losses back-to-back against really good teams. Also, they're now 3rd in their own division. They don't have a head-to-head in that point. So I don't see any way that either of those teams are making their way back to the playoff picture.
Which team should we be keeping an eye on moving forward, getting into that playoff picture?
The Big 12 is really interesting because Oklahoma plays TCU this weekend. Those 2 teams each have 1 loss, and obviously the winner of that game is going to be the favorite, but we could get a rematch in the Big 12 championship game. That's the craziest part of this Big 12. It's a round-robin schedule, and people said, well, if we have a round-robin schedule, why do we need a championship game? The playoff committee told them we need that 13th data point. That was all the discussion the past few years. they're now having it and bringing it to the table, but it could come back to bite them because if, let's say, OU wins this weekend and then TCU wins a rematch, what do you do with the Big 12? That's the fascinating part of that conference.
And we're looking forward to that. Meanwhile, let's talk about the ACC because the Hurricanes are off to an 8-0 start. They'll now host one of their old rivals, Notre Dame, Saturday night. In fact, the last loss for the Hurricanes going back to last year was against the Irish, but that was in South Bend. With all these playoff ramifications on the line, Pete, what are you looking forward to in this game?
Interesting with Josh Adams, what's his status? You know, he only played a little bit on Saturday, and now it's like Brian Kelly says he was not in concussion protocol. He just wasn't totally healthy. No one knows what exactly that means. He says he'll play this weekend. Is it just gamesmanship? We don't really know. But we do know is that Notre Dame wants to run the ball. They have a top 5 rushing offense this year, and Miami doesn't stop the run too well. 67th in the nation in run defense.
Thanks.
So if Notre Dame wants to win that game this weekend, they've got to get the ball on the ground. I don't want to trust Brandon Wimbush to win me a game. I don't want to do it. He's still a young player on the road against a pretty solid passing defense, so I don't want to go there. You got to have Josh Adams healthy. That's what I'm watching. And also, if Miami loses this game, they could still just have one loss, win the division, and if they beat Clemson in an ACC title game, what do? There's so many fascinating scenarios here for the college football playoff with only 3-4 weeks left.
Meanwhile, your boy, Baker Mayfield, he was on fire, throwing for almost 600 yards, 5 touchdowns. Did he put himself at the top of the Heisman race?
He did, not just because of what he did, but because of what those around him in the Heisman race did not do or did do. J.T. Barrett threw 4 interceptions. Saquon Barkley ran for 60-something yards. Same with Bryce Love. Josh Adams had 20-something rushing yards on the afternoon. So the guys that were competing against Baker Mayfield had bad games where Baker Mayfield threw for the 600 yards, as you mentioned. And his 2 best games this year are primetime games against top 10 teams in Ohio State and Oklahoma State. Half the time you got to have that Heisman moment. He's had 2 of them now on the biggest stages against great opponents, which is worth something as well.
Of course, we should talk about Alabama. They come away with a solid win over LSU, but 2 starting linebackers get injured. Pete, that brings the injured linebacker total for Alabama up to 4. Is this going to be a problem with you have likely Georgia on the schedule, but we know Auburn at the end of the year in the Iron Bowl?
You've got Auburn and Georgia, 2 teams in the top 20 in rushing offense in the country. You're now down 4 linebackers dating back to all their injuries they've had this season. It's a problem for Alabama. Now, they all said the right things after the game and yesterday, and Coach Saban saying next man up, and we know they have a ton of 4 or 5-star recruits that are ready. But there is an experience factor here. As you get late in the season, you have the Iron Bowl, you're going to have an SEC championship game against a Georgia team that's fantastic running the ball, has a really good offensive line. That's tough. So guys like Dylan Moses are going to have to step up, Keith Holcomb as well, but I don't feel incredibly confident about it. I know the parts around them can do it, but we'll see.
Final one for you really quick. Any changes you're expecting in the college football playoff rankings on Tuesday?
No, because Clemson and Oklahoma are the only 2 you'd maybe switch around. And Clemson beat a top 20 team in NC State. OU beat the 11th ranked team. The only debate there is who has the better loss. OU's loss to Iowa State, I think, is better than the loss to Syracuse, even though they lost their quarterback in that game. But I don't expect much change 1 through 4 at all.
Pete Mundo, our college football analyst. Lots to talk about, and we'll see you again later this week, Pete.
Anytime.
There was talk of the Knicks tanking, but Kristaps Porzingis, he'll have none of that. He's been too good, as the team is now over 500 after coming back from 19 down to beat the Pacers. 5-4 is the latest the Knicks have had a winning record since 2012-2013, coincidentally the last time they made the playoffs. KP had 40 points and 6 blocks and has scored the most points through 9 games in Knicks franchise history. Big men aren't dead. They've just evolved. And KP has put himself in the mix with Giannis, Anthony Davis, Towns, and Embiid. The question is, would you take him over those guys?
Oh, this is so hard. Not yet. Not yet. It's still too early on, and I'm still waiting to see whether or not Porzingis is going to have a little bit of a swoon at, like we've seen him sort of fade away in seasons past. He's missed 26 games over the last 2 seasons, and not that all of the rest of those guys have been healthy. We know Joel Embiid has missed a full season, but I feel like I just have to wait a little bit longer. But, Giannis to me is the top in terms of his versatility, what he's able to do, not just the points and the rebounds, the assists and how he's able to see the floor. But what I've been so impressed by with Porzingis to this point, the scoring, without a doubt, it's the defense too. All those blocks he's coming up with. I mean, he is someone to be feared in the paint, which I think is just fantastic. But I can't put him at the top yet.
Well, it is an impossible question to answer. But when you talk about KP wearing down, there's a couple of things he's done this year to make the leap. And one of them looks like core strength. He had trouble catching and finishing, which is an important skill when you're a freak of nature,
sure,
like he is. And that's what makes him stand out. You talk about the defense. He's number one in the league right now protecting the rim, allowing under 30% at shots at the basket, in addition to putting up all those buckets. When you're putting him in that list, I'd probably jump him over Embiid. Even if you're worried about KP's health, Embiid has the history there. I'd probably put him over Towns from the same draft class. It's difficult.
Ugh.
Anthony Davis is another guy who I would put right there with Giannis if he was able to stay on the court. So to me, if I'm taking all things into consideration and being a prisoner of the moment, it comes down to Giannis and Porzingis, with Giannis having the edge as far as a force going to the basket and a distributor, and Porzingis having the edge from the outside and inside interior defensively.
Do we have to wait this a little bit, though? I'm talking about Towns and the fact that he plays in the Western Conference. I mean, do we have to maybe give him a little bit more credit because, and I'm not saying that Orlando is a mirage or all these, but, the teams that he's going to be facing and the challenges night to night are going to be much bigger.
Well, let's wait it the other way then. The Knicks, outside of Porzingis, would have no business in this conversation. We would be talking about, could they be getting the next one of these guys in the draft coming up, and he has elevated their play. All of these guys are good enough where any one of them could put themselves to the top of the list. So this is probably a question we could ask again later.
Join us tomorrow. We'll be back asking the same question.
We're still asking questions about the Cavs, who lost again, this time to the Hawks, dropping them to 4-6, the last team to make the finals after having a losing record 10 games in, the 1980-81 Rockets. Afterwards, Dwayne Wade, who had 25 points off the bench, had some words for the starting unit for consistently falling behind.
It's no secret we're starting games off awful, terrible, and they got it going early, and the effort, the focus just wasn't there, to start it off, and you're trying to battle back, you wasting a lot of energy trying to come back from 16, 18 down. It's tough nightly to do that, so and we all know this is no secret in this locker room, but our first unit, we got to start off better.
Of course, Isaiah Thomas is expected to join the starters when he returns, and he had this to say on Twitter last night. People forget and act like I didn't bust their favorite point guards, all last season. LOL. Well, IT's return, will it be enough to get the Cavs out of this funk?
No, but I can see the frustration even from home. I mean, the Twitter fingers were in full effect. I don't know what kind of move they can make that's going to help them, quite frankly. We look at Kevin Love. The trade value just is not there. You don't have a lot of teams in the league who are taking on big salaries, except for maybe Brooklyn. Maybe they would be a trade partner, but nobody really wants to take that on right now. So unless you want to start dangling that Brooklyn Nets pick, the first-round pick, which is probably looking a little bit less and less more valuable by the day because Brooklyn's a lot better than we thought they were going to be. I don't know where the sort of cavalry is coming from. And yeah, Isaiah Thomas is going to come back. That's going to be big. But when you're looking at where the Warriors are compared to what the Cavs could do, because honestly, if I am another team in the NBA, why am I giving the Cavs my best young players for a first-round pick that might not be as high as we think? It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Like I said, without Kevin Love's trade value being where we thought it would be at this point, then I don't know how many options they have.
Thomas is going to help the Cavs. They went from Kyrie Irving to possibly the worst starting point guard in the league in Derrick Rose. You bring in a guy who had a tremendous season last year, that's going to elevate you. Of course, he's not known for his defensive prowess. It always helps you defensively when you're scoring, but it doesn't address their root problem, which is that they are the worst defensive team in the league right now. Boston is actually the best. So one question we may ask going forward is, was Kyrie a little prescient in his move right here? Because the Cavs probably will have to make moves outside of Isaiah Thomas to get on that level. Otherwise, they're going to be relying on the kind of performances LeBron James had on Friday night and seeing if he can do that 4 out of 7 games.
Oh, yeah, but you don't want LeBron to have to score 57 points, play the entire second half in November. No. You want to be able to save him towards the end of the season. And, they say that defense is about effort. The one caveat to that is not if you're old. If you're old, then maybe it's not only about effort. Maybe it's about actually being able to, put on a good defensive show and actually stay in front of your man.
I mean, defense is about length. It's about lateral quickness. It's about communication. And it's about effort. And right now, even if the Cavs give forth the effort, they may not be able to move fast enough from point A to point B in order to stop player C from getting to the rack.
That was a lot of math there. Of course, we see you out there on Facebook Live. Thank you so much for weighing in. Queen Kira, friend of the show, and we appreciate all of your comments, says trade LeBron in his final year to the Nets.
That'd be
What, are we
interesting.
punishing him? I'm just kidding. Thank you so much for watching SI Now on a Monday. We appreciate it. Of course, we'll be back tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time is where you can find us. And, of course, on SI.com for all the latest news and headlines. And SI Now Live, that's our Twitter handle. That's where we post clips from the show. Whew, see you tomorrow for Tuesday. Monday's over.
That's always a good thing.
Yeah.
On to the next.